You know, for most of our lives, if you'd heard the word coronavirus, you probably would have just thought of the common cold, a minor bug, right? So how on earth did a virus from that same family end up causing a global crisis? Well, let's dive in and figure that out.
So here's the plan. First, we're going to get to know the viral family itself. Then, we'll look at the early warning shots. I'm talking about the outbreaks that really should have been a red flag. Next, we'll zero in on the one sneaky trick that let this particular virus spread across the entire globe. After that, we'll explore the incredible scientific toolbox we built to fight back. And finally, we're going to ask the biggest question of all. Are we actually ready for the next one?
All right, let's start at the very beginning. What even is a coronavirus? Let's break down the fundamentals.
So where's that name come from? Well, it's actually Latin. Corona means crown. And that's because if you look at one of these things under a microscope, you'll see these little spikes sticking out all over, kind of like a crown. For decades after they were found back in the 60s, that's really all we thought of them as. Just one of the many, many viruses that give you the sniffles.
The virus itself is a surprisingly simple little machine. Think of it as having just 4 main parts. But the one you really need to know about is S, the spike protein. This thing acts like a master key. Its whole job is to find our cells and unlock them so the virus can get inside. This tiny protein, it's basically the star of our entire story.
For a long, long time, this virus family was pretty predictable. But then, in the 21st century, that all changed. We got two, let's call them dress rehearsals, two major warnings that these viruses had a much darker, much deadlier side.
First, in 2002, the world met SARS. Then, almost exactly a decade later, MERS showed up. And then, in 2019, SARS-CoV-2 arrived on the scene. The pattern here is, well, it's pretty hard to ignore. These dangerous viruses jumping from animals to humans were starting to happen more and more often.
Okay, now this is where things get really fascinating. Look at these numbers. You can almost see the viruses making an evolutionary trade-off. MERS was an absolute monster. Look at that case fatality rate, over 34%. But it was terrible at spreading. It was just too deadly. It burned itself out. SARS-CoV-2, on the other hand, it went the other way. Far less deadly, but its R0, its ability to spread, was just off the charts. It didn't use brute force. It chose stealth. So, why was it so good at being sneaky?
And that brings us right to the heart of the mystery. What was its secret weapon? What was the one unique trick that allowed this third coronavirus to succeed on a global scale where the other two had failed?
This, right here, this is the absolute game changer. With SARS and MERS, you usually got sick, fever, cough, before you got really contagious. That made it way easier to find sick people and isolate them to stop the virus. But SARS-CoV-2, it completely rewrote the rules. It mastered the art of invisible spread. People were walking around, spreading the virus for days before they even had a clue they were sick. Some people never showed symptoms at all.
This quote it nails it, doesn't it? It says everything. It's really hard to fight an enemy that you can't even see. By the time we could identify one sick person, they might have already and completely unknowingly passed it on to dozens of others. And the result of that one evolutionary trick? This number. Just let that sink in for a second. That's the power of silent spread, a virus that was perfectly and terrifyingly adapted to our modern, interconnected world.
But that is not where the story ends, not even close. As the virus was spreading like wildfire, science and public health were in a race against time, building an entire toolbox from the ground up to fight back. The global strategy basically boiled down to this 3-pronged attack. First, you have to detect the invisible enemy. That meant developing tests like PCR and antigen tests at lightning speed. Second, you have to treat the people who get sick, figuring out supportive care and developing brand new antiviral drugs. And third, the big one, you have to prevent it from spreading in the first place, with public health measures and, of course, the record-shattering development of multiple, highly effective vaccines.
And all of that brings us to today, to the final and, let's be honest, probably the most critical question we have to ask ourselves. We just went through a brutal global test, so did we learn our lesson? Are we ready now?
One of the biggest takeaways from all of this is that we can't just sit around and wait for a virus to pop up in people. The real answer lies in something called the One Health approach. It's a simple idea, but it's incredibly powerful. It just says that you can't possibly protect the health of people if you're not also protecting the health of animals and the environment that we all have to share. They're all connected.
So what does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it means we have to be out there, actively looking for new viruses in animal populations so we can spot threats before they spill over. It means we have to keep investing in cutting-edge tech so that the next time we can develop vaccines and treatments even faster. And maybe most importantly, it means everybody has to work together. A virus doesn't care about borders, so our response can't either.
So we're going to leave you with this thought. We have seen, firsthand, how a virus that usually just causes a cold can bring the entire world to its knees. We've also seen the incredible things we can do when we fight back. But being prepared, that isn't a destination you arrive at. It's something you have to do every single day. The real question for all of us is, will we finally treat this as the wake-up call we so desperately needed?